They called my business a science fair gone rogue. Now they're begging to clean machines in my warehouse. I gave them jobs. Then they tried to rebrand me, so I fired the whole damn family. I knew I shouldn't have worn the navy dress with the little embroidered cats, but it was clean and didn't scream failure, so I figured it would do. My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 34 years old, and I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. That night, my entire extended family gathered at Grandamore, the kind of restaurant where appetizers were spelled, hors d'oeuvres, and every waiter looked like they'd rather be somewhere else. It was a 10-year celebration for my older brother, Colin, now officially Dr. Colin Monroe, tenured associate professor of computational neuroscience at the University of Chicago. The pride of the family. The golden boy. I tried to stay quiet through most of dinner. Between sips of lemon tea and picking at my arugula salad, I kept waiting for the right moment. When the dessert menus hit the table, I figured it was now or never. So I said, trying to sound casual, I wanted to share something. I left the university job. Heads turned. Knives paused mid-cut. Even my cousin Megan, who usually spent dinners buried in her phone, looked up. My mother blinked, then forced a tight smile. Oh, that admin job? You were assistant director of events. Coordinator, I corrected. But yeah, I left it. Dad leaned back in his chair. And what exactly are you doing now? I felt my hands grip the edge of the table. I started my own business. It's kind of a creative project I've been working on for a while. I'm refurbishing old vending machines and customizing them for different uses. Art galleries, campuses, even startup offices. There was a pause. Not a respectful one. The kind that rolls in just before a bad joke. Colin snorted. So you're turning vending machines into art? My uncle, a retired chemist, laughed out loud. What is this? A science fair gone rogue. Someone at the end of the table whispered, is that even a thing people pay for? It's a passion project, I said, sitting up straighter. But it's also a business. I've already landed 3 clients. Mom waved her hand like she was dismissing a fly. Honey, it sounds like a hobby. I mean, after all that education. She has a master's in arts administration, Colin chimed in. And now she's painting snack machines. Fascinating use of tuition dollars. I took another sip of tea and forced a smile. It's more than just painting. Sure, Colin said. Hey, maybe you can make one of those fancy machines for Dad's garage, fill it with wrenches and cold beer. Laughter exploded around the table. Even Megan chuckled, eyes back on her phone. I stared down at my cup, turning it slowly. The heat from the ceramic burned my fingers, but I liked the feeling. It grounded me, kept me from saying the things I really wanted to say. I swallowed. Glad you're all enjoying yourselves. Dad raised his glass. To Rachel. May her hobby keep her busy until she finds a real job. They cackled. Like it was all harmless. Like I hadn't just laid out something I built with my own hands. I smiled again. The kind of smile that keeps you from crying in public. I raised my cup and clinked it gently against the stem of Mom's wine glass. To hobbies, I said, and the people too scared to try one. The laughter died down after that. But I didn't care. I already knew I was building something they'd never understand. The laughter from that dinner clung to me like smoke. I could still hear Colin's voice in my head the next morning, painting snack machines. The words made my stomach twist. But it wasn't the first time I'd been the punchline. I remembered being 16, standing at a high school debate tournament, nervously gripping my note cards. My brother had won state the year before, brilliant, charming, unbeatable. I had just lost in the quarterfinals to a girl who quoted Supreme Court rulings from memory. I walked up to Dad afterward, hoping for something. A pat on the back. A nice try. Instead, he barely looked up from his newspaper and muttered, well, at least your brother made it further. You were more of a distraction, honestly. That line never left me. It came back in college when I was struggling to keep my scholarship and Colin was already publishing academic papers. It came back when I got my first entry-level job, coordinator, not manager, never quite enough, while Colin got invited to speak at conferences. But this time I had something they didn't know how to measure. I unlocked the steel door to my warehouse just after 8 the next morning. It used to be a junkyard storage unit at the edge of Ypsilanti, a town no one bothered visiting unless they were already lost. Now it was mine. The floor was still cracked concrete. The air smelled faintly of dust and machine oil. But inside? It was beautiful. 7 refurbished vending machines stood in a neat row, each one painted in bright custom colors. One was retrofitted with a display screen that looped videos of local artists. Another dispensed small poetry chapbooks. A third had an NFC payment system synced to crypto wallets, for some tech guy who wanted to gamify hydration on his startup campus. I sat down at the folding table I used as my desk and opened my laptop. The numbers didn't lie. Last month's revenue had crossed $6,000. That was more than what I used to make in 2 months at the university. I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt like working. So I picked up the sandpaper and started prepping the next machine. A rusted beast I found outside an old roller rink. I didn't stop until my arms ached and my hair was matted to my neck. People always think revenge is loud. Mine was quiet. Quiet like a drill at midnight. Quiet like checking bank statements and seeing the balance grow. Quiet like watching my inbox fill with inquiries from places my family considered real. Stanford, MoMA, a startup incubator in Boston. The warehouse stayed hot even after sunset. I rolled up my sleeves and opened the next box of paint. I had a long way to go. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care about catching up to anyone. I was already ahead. They just hadn't realized it yet. It started with a text from Mom. "Sweetheart, when are you free to talk? Your father and I wanted to ask your opinion on something." That alone was bizarre. My family didn't ask my opinion. They gave me theirs and expected silence in return. Still, I waited a few hours before replying. When I finally did, the phone rang almost immediately. "Hi, honey," Mom said, using that brittle version of her voice she reserved for funerals and bad news. "We were wondering if you might want to come over for dinner next week. Just talk. Catch up." I should have said no. But curiosity, and maybe a little pettiness, got the better of me. I agreed and she offered Wednesday night. "Colin will be there too," she added quickly, like that was a selling point. Great. When I arrived, the table was already set. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, salad. Real silverware. Candles. I had never seen them go this all out unless someone died or got published in the Atlantic. Colin looked rougher than usual. His hair was longer but not in a cool way. More like he hadn't found the energy to book a haircut. He smiled when I walked in but it didn't touch his eyes. "Ratch," he said. "Good to see you." "You too," I lied. Dinner was civil at first, too civil. Small talk, safe topics. My parents asked about my business, though their questions were vague and performed, like they'd Googled how to seem interested in your daughter's vending machine company. Then Dad cleared his throat and leaned back in his chair. "So listen, your mother and I were thinking about retirement." I blinked. "Okay. Well," Mom jumped in, "we took some losses in the last couple of years. Investments, the university fund, inflation, blah blah, long story short, we're in a bit of a financial pinch." That's when Colin spoke. "And my startup, it didn't work out. We shut it down last month." "Wait," I said. "I thought you had funding lined up." "We did. Until we didn't." He smiled like it was a joke. No one laughed. "So," Mom said, folding her napkin too neatly, "we were wondering if you'd be willing to let us shadow your business. You know, just to learn. Maybe help out. See how we can be useful." Useful. That word echoed around my brain like a ricochet. When had they ever cared about being useful? I took a long sip of water. "Is that what this dinner is about?" "No," Dad said too quickly. "Not entirely." I leaned back and smiled. "Interesting. Because I actually have some news too." They all looked up, almost hopeful. "I bought the brownstone," I said. "Your brownstone?" "The one on 5th Avenue. Mom's fork slipped from her hand. Colin stared. "You what?" "I bought it last month. It was up for sale, one of those quiet listings. I put in an offer. All cash." Silence. Thick and stunned. "Why would you?" Dad started, but I held up a hand. "You needed stability, right? You've said that house is part of our legacy. So I preserved it." "You're welcome." They all blinked at me like I had grown a second head. Then I smiled wider. "Of course you'll have to start paying rent. I'm having the property reappraised next week." Mom finally found her voice. "Rachel, that's delicious," I said, standing up and grabbing my coat. "Dinner was great. Let me know if you want to fill out a rental application." And with that I walked out. I made it to the sidewalk before I started laughing. It wasn't cruel. Not entirely. But after a lifetime of being the family afterthought? Yeah, it felt damn good to be the one holding the deed. They didn't wait long. By Saturday my phone was blowing up. Missed calls from Mom, vague texts from Colin. One message from Dad just read, "We need to talk." Immediately. So I agreed to meet. Back at the brownstone, of course. The irony was too perfect to resist. When I arrived, Dad was already pacing in the foyer like a lawyer preparing for trial. Mom was in her usual armchair, wearing that silk blouse she saved for serious conversations. Colin sat stiffly at the edge of the couch, phone in hand, tapping the screen like it could save him. I shut the door behind me and didn't sit down. "You've made your point," Dad said sharply, skipping the pleasantries. "You've embarrassed us. Congratulations." "I wasn't trying to embarrass you," I replied coolly. "Just exercising my rights. As the legal property owner." "You blindsided us," Mom said, her voice brittle. "This isn't how families operate, Rachel." "No." I crossed my arms. "How do families operate?" By mocking their daughter's career choices? By calling her business a hobby? By pretending she doesn't exist until they need a bailout? Colin shifted in his seat. Okay, look, maybe we didn't take your business seriously, eh? You didn't take me seriously, I snapped. Not ever. Dad's jaw tightened. You don't talk to us like that. We're your parents. I laughed once, a short, bitter sound. Oh, now your parents. Where was that energy when I was a kid? When Colin got trophies and scholarships and I got, what, you try, and that counts for something. Mom winced. That was years ago. It's the foundation, I said. It's why you still can't see me as anything but a backup plan with a bank account. Colin finally looked up. So what's your angle here? You gonna kick us out? Make us grovel? No, I pulled a folded letter from my bag and laid it gently on the coffee table. You've got 30 days to sign a lease. Rent's market rate, lower than what you pay anywhere else in this neighborhood. Or you can move. Dad stared at the envelope like it was a loaded gun. You can't be serious. I am. Mom's voice cracked. We raised you. How can you be so cold? I swallowed hard. You raised me to believe I wasn't enough. You raised me to feel small so I'd keep trying to prove myself. And I did. I worked. I saved. I built something from nothing while you all laughed. Now I'm done trying. You owe us some decency, Dad said. No, I said. I owe myself peace. And I'm finally claiming it. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Colin stood, ready to argue, but I didn't give him the chance. You have 30 days, I repeated. If you want to keep living here, you'll have to pay, like everyone else. Then I turned and walked to the door. Dad called after me, something about loyalty, something about family. But I didn't stop. I opened the door, stepped out, and closed it behind me with a soft, final click. For the first time in my life, their outrage didn't make me flinch. It made me certain. The rain had been steady all afternoon, soft at first, then heavier, soaking the gravel lot outside my warehouse until it shimmered like wet glass. I was in the middle of organizing a new shipment of parts when I heard the knock. I knew before I even opened the door. There they were. All of them. My parents in matching windbreakers, hair damp and clinging to their faces. Colin in a hoodie, his shoes already tracking mud across the concrete entryway. They looked tired. Smaller. Like the world had finally shrunk around them the way it used to shrink around me. Rachel, Mom said, her voice trembling. We didn't know where else to go. I didn't say anything. Just stepped aside and let them in. They looked around the space like it was their first time seeing it, which, in fairness, it was. Rows of gleaming refurbished vending machines stood like soldiers in formation. Custom lighting. Wall racks for parts. A whiteboard scribbled with delivery schedules. I saw it in their faces, the realization that this wasn't some tinkering hobby. It was an operation. Colin cleared his throat. We were wondering if there's anything we can do to help. Around here. My eyebrows lifted. Help. Dad swallowed. We're in a tough spot. The bank's not willing to refinance without a cosigner. We've applied for assistance, but we're months behind. And Colin's accounts are frozen until the settlement clears. So I said slowly, you're asking for work? Silence. Then Mom nodded, eyes glassy. Yes. I studied them for a moment, really looked. These people, who once said I was chasing a fantasy, were now standing in that fantasy, soaked to the skin, asking for a job. I let the pause linger. Then I nodded once. Fine. Relief hit their faces like a gust of warm air. But there are rules, I said. You're not family here. You're employees. That means no special treatment. No skipping shifts. No criticizing the systems I already built. Dad opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. You'll start in repair. Cleaning. Inventory. Colin, you'll handle serial tracking and soldering. Mom, you'll rotate through customer service and paint touch-ups. You're serious, she whispered. As a heart attack. Colin let out a breath. That's fine. I'll take anything. I nodded toward the back. There are coveralls by the lockers. You'll find everything else labeled. No one moved right away. Then slowly they peeled off wet jackets and walked deeper into the space. Toward the machines. Toward the reality they had once mocked. I sat back down at my desk and opened my laptop. Let them learn. Let them sweat. Let them earn what they never respected. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand what I'd been building all along. By week 2, they'd stop complaining out loud. Colin showed up each morning exactly at 8, eyes bleary, hoodie still damp from his sad little commuter bike. I caught him staring at a soldering iron like it was a foreign object, which, for him, it probably was. I need you to reattach the bracket inside the snack loader, I said, pointing to a half-gutted vending machine. If you mess it up, the whole unit seizes. He gave me a weak smile. No pressure. 15 minutes later, he was pacing in the break room with a damp paper towel wrapped around his hand. I didn't know it would get that hot. Maybe read the safety sheet next time, I said. Mom was worse. She spent her first customer service shift trying to improve the aesthetic of the front desk by moving things around. That ended when one of the interns, a kid named Darian with blue hair and a Stanford hoodie, politely told her to put the pins back where they belonged. They don't respect me, she whispered during lunch, slicing into a tuna wrap like it had personally betrayed her. They don't need to, I said. You're not here for respect. You're here for a paycheck. Dad took to cleaning machines in the far corner, out of sight, mostly silent. I think he preferred it that way. On the third day, I saw him scrubbing years of grime off a rusted keypad, jaw clenched, sweat dripping onto the concrete. He didn't ask for a break. The interns watched all of it. And they didn't hide their reactions. One of them asked if Colin was the temp who messed up the circuit board. Another giggled when Mom tried to ask for a desk promotion. I let it all happen. Because the truth was, none of them had any idea how much work this took. Not until now. Not until they were elbow deep in the machines, with black under their nails and numbers to log and deadlines to hit. By Friday, something started to shift. Mom no longer flinched when she wiped down touchscreens. Colin showed Darian a new labeling shortcut, and actually got a fist bump. Even Dad grunted out a thank you when I tossed him a fresh rag. That night, we locked up late. I stood near the door, watching them head out one by one. Colin lingered. Hey, he said, scratching his neck. The new tech campus rep said she wants 2 more art units by next month. That's kind of huge. I nodded. It is. He hesitated. I know we don't deserve it, this job, this chance, but thanks. For not slamming the door. I didn't say anything. Just turned off the lights and let the silence settle in. They were tired. Humbled. Ashamed. Good. Let them sit in it. Let them understand what it means to build something real, not for prestige, not for applause, but because no one ever handed it to you. And now finally they were starting to see. 3 months in, they started acting like it was their idea all along. Colin began using words like branding strategy and vertical integration during lunch breaks. Mom started folding the customer service reports into little organized piles with color-coded sticky notes. And Dad, who barely spoke for weeks, suddenly had strong opinions about streamlining operations. I saw it coming before it hit. Pride always follows desperation, and my family had enough of both to fill a warehouse. It all came to a head on a Tuesday. I walked into the break room to refill my coffee, and they were all sitting there, waiting like some kind of intervention committee. Colin stood up first. Hey, Ratch. So we've been talking, he said, smiling too wide. About the company. About how far you've come. I narrowed my eyes. Okay. Mom jumped in. And we think it's time to take things to the next level. You know, elevate the image. Make it more polished. Polished. Like we weren't already in 3 major tech campuses and 2 art galleries. Dad leaned forward. It's time to rebrand. New logo. New name. Something more sophisticated. And maybe. Let us handle it, Colin finished. The branding, the management, the whole front-facing identity. I blinked. You want to take over management? Not take over, Mom said quickly. Just steer it in the right direction. You've done amazing getting it off the ground, sweetheart. Truly. But you're not a business person. I leaned against the counter, heart pounding slow and cold. I'm sorry, what am I then? Colin chuckled. You're the creative. The visionary. Let us handle the structure. The real decisions. I looked at the 3 of them, sitting there like a makeshift board of directors in their second-hand coveralls in borrowed confidence, and something in me snapped. Not loudly, just clean and final, like the click of a well-made lock. I set my coffee down, walked out of the room, and came back 5 minutes later with the folder. I dropped it on the table. What's this? Dad asked. Eviction notice, I said flat. 30 days. Same as before. But this time from the business. Colin's face fell. You're kidding. I wasn't. You're trying to hijack something you didn't believe in. You mocked me when I started this. You called it a hobby. A science fair. Now that it's successful, suddenly it's yours to professionalize. Mom's voice trembled. We just wanted to help. No, I said. You wanted control. You saw something you could finally brag about at dinner parties, something you could reshape into a story that makes you look good. Colin stood up, red in the face. You're being selfish. You're sitting on a gold mine and shutting your own family out. That's short-sighted. I smiled, cold, calm, unmoved. No, that's called boundaries. And they're long overdue. Dad's jaw clenched. So that's it? After everything we've done. You mean cleaning machines and logging serial numbers? I interrupted. That's not a sacrifice. That's a job. And now it's over. They were stunned silent. I gathered the folder and placed it back in my bag. You have 30 days. After that, your keys won't work. And if you even think about touching my brand, I'll bury you in cease and desist letters. Then I walked away. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. Because the most powerful sound in the world is the silence that follows you making the rules. They didn't believe I'd go through with it. Even after the second notice. Even after I disabled their keycards. Even after I gave them one last warning in a group email, subject line, 30 days means 30 days. They thought I was bluffing, but I wasn't. On the 31st day, at 8 a.m. sharp, I showed up with 2 warehouse employees, a locksmith, and a clipboard. The intern squad watched from the side lot like they were witnessing a live courtroom drama. It only took 20 minutes to pack up the Monroes. 3 duffel bags. 1 battered briefcase. No thank yous. No, we understand. Just a stunned silence as they stood out front, blinking in the morning sun like they had just stepped into a world they no longer belonged to. Where do we go now? Mom asked like I was still the family fixer. I pointed at the sidewalk. Wherever you want. Just not here. Dad opened his mouth but no sound came out. Colin stared at the gravel beneath his feet like he might cry. Or vomit. Or both. I turned around and shut the door. That was the last time they set foot in my warehouse. But it wasn't the last time they felt it. 2 weeks later, I finalized the purchase of the campus building at Westfield and Barton, the same building where the university held their board meetings. The same one where my father had given dozens of lectures. I didn't buy it for profit. I bought it for the poetry. A refurbished vending unit now stands in the lobby. It dispenses academic satire zines and artisan espresso pots. I named it the Tenure Machine. Every so often I get an email from one of Dad's old colleagues. They ask if I'm the same Rachel Monroe who used to work in admin and was Colin's sister. I never answer. Because now I'm not the sister. I'm the landlord. As for the family, they moved into a rental outside of town. Smaller. Farther. Quieter. I hear they're not invited to as many parties anymore. Academic circles have long memories but not the forgiving kind. And me? I just keep building. No noise. No apologies. Just machines, interns, and numbers that go up every month. The House of Monroe didn't collapse overnight. It was dismantled 1 screw, 1 lease, 1 silence at a time. The email came on a Thursday. Subject, hey, it's Colin. I almost deleted it without reading. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside it was short. Careful. Almost humbled. Hey Ratch. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I'm reaching out anyway. Things have been rough. I'm out of options. I messed up professionally, financially, and personally. I need work. If there's anything at the warehouse, I'll take it. I don't care what the job is. Please. Colin. No ego. No snide remarks. No passive-aggressive academic lingo. Just a man whose golden parachute had finally failed to open. I waited a day before replying. Then I kept it just as brief. There's an opening on the floor. Repair and prep. Hourly. No title, no favors. Show up Monday. 8 a.m. If you're late, don't bother. He replied within minutes. I'll be there. And he was. No hoodie this time, just a plain t-shirt and jeans that didn't quite fit right, like he'd lost weight. His eyes looked older than the last time I saw him. Less certain. He clocked in without saying a word and got to work sanding old sticker residue off a scratched vending door. Darian, the blue-haired intern, walked by and gave him a nod. New guy? He asked. Yeah, I said. Just another pair of hands. And that's exactly what he became. No speeches. No rebirth arcs. Just work. There was something strangely satisfying about it. Not vengeance. Not revenge. Balance. For years I had lived in his shadow. Now he worked quietly in mine, not because I asked him to, but because he had nowhere else to stand. And I made sure he knew this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about standards. And he'd have to meet them, just like everyone else. 1 year later, I barely recognized my own life and I liked it that way. I started every morning the same. Coffee in hand, laptop open, warehouse security cams glowing across my screen. I watched the teams roll in. Young, sharp, capable. They knew the machines better than anyone. I didn't need to hover. I just had to steer. Revenue was up. Way up. We had installations in 10 cities now and a 6-month waitlist for custom units. A micro-documentary about us had aired on PBS. I didn't even know until a friend texted me, "You're in my living room." On TV. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my tea. Colin still worked in the back, quiet, efficient, respectful. He never asked for a raise. Never tried to get cozy. He just showed up and did the job. And I let him. I never brought up the past. He never asked about the future. Mom and Dad? I hadn't heard a word. And that was exactly how I liked it. Because I'd learned something important in those 12 months. Some people only see your worth when it benefits them. But once you stop feeding that illusion, once you draw the line and hold it, they disappear. And what they leave behind, that's your space to build something better. My warehouse had grown into a hub, a hybrid showroom and workshop with bright murals, smart lighting, and polished floors that gleamed like a lab. College kids toured it. Startup founders emailed me. Press articles called me an unexpected innovator. One even called me a visionary of vending culture, which made me laugh so hard I almost framed it. But what meant more than any of that were the interns. They looked up to me, really looked. Not because of a title. Not because of a name. Because I had built something weird and smart and real. Something from the ground up, with my own hands, in spite of every voice that once told me I wasn't enough. And now? They wanted to follow. I closed my laptop, the numbers still climbing behind the glass. The hum of machines carried through the floor. Somewhere, someone was painting a new door. Somewhere else, someone was soldering a wire or sealing a panel or laughing too loud at something they probably shouldn't. It sounded like home. I stood, rolled my shoulders, and walked toward the warehouse floor. Not to work. Not to prove anything. Just to be the woman who owned it all. No more begging. No more explaining. No more shrinking to fit inside someone else's version of success. This empire? This strange, buzzing, candy-filled, neon-lit empire? It was mine. And finally, only mine.